welcome to another episode of Laying Down the Lore 40K, a lore podcast in which we aim to separate our Drukhari from our Dark Angels, our Tyranids from our Tau, and our Craft Worlds from our Chaos Marines, and generally ask, what's up with this Warhammer 40K stuff? My name is Ben Chrome Barber, and I know pretty much fuck all about 40K. With me is my co-host Christopher Crowlin Allen.
Ahoy hoy.
Who knows absolutely fuck all about 40K.
Ahoy hoy.
And my dear brother Darren.
Hello.
Who knows so much about 40K, it's a wonder he has time to do anything else. Over the years, this dichotomy between our levels of understanding became clear, and this series is an attempt to address that...
Dunno.
Ignorance!
Oh, I thought it was a
just
full stop. It was just like, this is an attempt to address that. Full stop.
Just
be honest,
yeah, just that.
I was just stunned into silence that Darren didn't interrupt the intro. That was the smoothest intro.
I'm going to go ahead and call that intro the most pedestrian we've ever done.
Yeah, dull.
Yeah.
Boring.
Yeah, it did. It did feel like you were walking through it, mate. There was no pizzazz.
Yeah,
mate.
And you've really let this side down as well. I mean,
Well, I agree. I kept quiet because during every record, I'm constantly shouted at and harangued, dear listeners, by two reprobates who try and be a bit more professional, Darren. And you can tell my level of professionality because I did an amusing voice instead of, just speaking normally.
I think me and Kral saying that you should be more professional has happened literally 0 times.
You aren't the one who needs to be more professional, mate. We just need you to stop interrupting the intro. Professionalism isn't what you're lacking.
Sorry, guys. I wasn't listening. What did you say?
Hey, there he is. There he is. We're at 70% Dar. Let's see where that gauge goes from here.
Okay. What did we listen to last week?
You droning on, you bastard.
Okay, hang on. How many custodies are there?
Kral, you've got this.
10,000.
Oh, look out.
Nailing it.
Didn't even break a sweat. Fucking hell.
Come at me, bras. I've done my research.
Of those 10,000 then,
300.
Oh, you fucker.
I knew exactly where you're going with that question too.
That's awesome.
They begin their initiation from about a toddler age.
Stop reading it, Kral. Just do this on the top of your head. I can see your fucking eyes moving.
Just custodies again.
Just how long do they have to stand there? What's the shift?
They have to stand there indefinitely, but they can stand there motionless with very little sustenance for many, many years. Apart from if someone comes by with a cheeky Twix.
I thought it was up to a year.
Cheeky Twix.
I thought it was more. I thought it could be over a year that they could be ready in action.
Yeah.
Just standing there, literally peeing and pooping into a kind of recycling
because their stupid golden suits can take care of all that business.
That doesn't strike me as stupid. That strikes me as very practical.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, look, I'm doing it right now, and I'm not wearing the suit, and it's I'm gonna have to deal with that later on. If I had a golden suit,
if you had a choice between an enormous set of golden power armor that recycles everything or a colostomy bag, which would you choose? Go.
I thought you were going to say tank top. I was like, ooh, that's a tough choice. Or a colostomy bag. Could I have part of the armor and the colostomy bag, like the colostomy bag and the shoulder pads?
Yes, but the colostomy bag would have to be strapped to your mouth. Because of all the shit you're talking.
Sit down, Ben. All right, go on.
Sit down. Yeah, sit down, Ben, if you can. Oh, my hair.
Right, who else did we talk about?
We talked about a collection of anti-psychic mutes.
The Sisters of Silence.
Yeah. And now, Chris, how many of them are there?
The Sisters of Silence.
Silence. Marriage.
They're pariahs. They are.
Yeah. But how many are they?
Several.
I don't think that we discussed the number.
No, there wasn't a number.
Fantastic. It was a trick question, Krell.
It was a trick question. To whom do the Sisters of Silence report?
That's a good one. That is a good one. Is it Krell?
High Lords of Terror?
Can you imagine?
What if it's Krell?
Yeah.
I've often found most women are quiet around Krell.
And a bit beige.
Yeah.
And wishing they didn't have a soul.
Pariah wannabes.
That's what you sound like. I think they answer to the High Lords of Terror.
Ultimately, yes, the High Lords of Terror.
Do they answer to the Inquisitors? Are they their line manager?
Well, I believe, as we've covered previously, everyone answers to the Inquisitors.
Wow.
So the answer to both of those was yes, basically.
But there's someone specific.
Next question.
There is someone specific that he is getting at, somewhere in that line of command.
Mr. Sister of Silence.
So, give some thought to then. What is the function of the Sisters of Silence? What do they do? What are they used for?
They collect psychers.
Yeah. And who processes psychers and uses psychers?
The Emperor for the Astronomicon.
Oh, it's the Astronomica. It's the
right.
The Telepathica, the kind of clearinghouse, where when the psychers come in, it's literally cake or death. In terms of what they're going to be.
You go cake every time, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'll be a slice of gatto, please. Well, no, you wouldn't go cake every time because the Emperor then eats you. It's death or death, really.
Yeah.
It's death or delayed death. What's it going to be? Delayed, delicious death.
No icing. Find icing too much. It's just pure sugar. Like, ugh. Not an icing kind of dude.
Who were the mysterious warriors clad in fire?
They were.
I know this. Go on, Ben.
Is it the Black?
Nope.
The Legion of the Damned.
Yeah.
Metal music playing in the background whenever they bamf into existence.
Yeah.
That was. We've never listened to metal music, have we? Obviously.
What's that music? Sounds like a thrash banjo. What's that? Can either of you remember the original chapter name for the Legion of the Damned from their very first kind of...
Either Space Hawks or Firehawks.
Oh, Firehawks.
Wow. Krell, you are... Have you changed something in your diet that's kind of increased memory, increased cognition?
Yeah.
He's eating brains.
I'm doing that thing that Space Marines do.
Yeah.
I've eaten a bit of...
you ate the brain of somebody who was in the podcast last recording.
Exactly.
It would explain why the back of my head is so bloody. Yeah.
And holy.
And holy. So the last episode there, we just dealt with all the more esoteric and mysterious aspects of the Imperium. I think we looked at a couple of sites as well, a couple of locations, like the Lorelei crystals. Do you remember what Lorelei crystals were?
Oh, yeah, that's the tarot deck, isn't it?
Nope.
Oh, you wouldn't let it, Lorelei.
You wouldn't let Lorelei.
Literally.
No, these are the Kyber crystal equivalents within 40K. It's the crystals that create force weapons and allow psychic powers to be processed through machines.
The focused psychic energy,
exactly,
isn't it?
Yeah. And then we looked at something Chris already referred to, the Omega Vault.
Omega Vault.
Discuss.
Right, Krell. Okay, so I've got this. It's a vault. it's
Nope.
it's filled with like some sort of toxic thing that kills everything but humans, which is really quite amazing because there are a lot of things in the 40k universe that seem dramatically more resilient than human beings. But yeah, apparently they all die in this vault if they gain access. It opens up at various points in time
and really
when there's
opportune
a big crisis.
moments.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's like the Emperor is going to meet the Mechanicum for the first time. The vault opens and there is a spoon and Uri Geller in a stasis field. And Uri Geller teaches him how to bend spoons, and then he goes and he makes that alliance. So yeah, stuff like that.
Why do I even fucking bother?
I know.
You bother because
right?
of these very moments. Because look at your students reciting this knowledge. You're such a good tutor and master. That's why you do it, mate.
I can't tell if he's saying that as a good thing or a bad thing, though. Crap. I don't know.
You never know.
I either got that really right or really wrong. One of the two.
Either way, I'm scared.
But basically, they robbed the idea off of Foundation series, didn't they? Isaac Asimov. Jobby, because it's pretty much
sort
the
of,
entire story.
Yeah, and no one knows who built the vault or when it was built, but it just seems to offer up the solution for any crisis they're in at the moment, which makes me think either someone had the precognition to fill it with the stuff they need, or the vault just has everything ever.
But that wasn't there is I think Darren said there was some evidence that it could have been the Adeptus Chronos?
The Ordo Chronos. Yeah.
Ordo Chronos. Which are the time specialists who all disappeared weirdly. So, it could.
I like the idea of disappearing weirdly. Did they just like suddenly go, and then vanish?
Ooh, that was a bit weird. Like, could have done that more normally.
Walking out the door on their hands. Okay.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
As he just disappeared into thin air, he was just doing jazz hands. He was just going, woo, bam, gone. Well, that was a bit odd.
And I think we gave a couple of examples of the things that were found in the vault. What was the oddest one?
Was it an upside down pineapple? Something about that?
Again, the symbol of swingers, Ben. Why do you know these things so...
Because you told me last recording.
It was an astropath frozen in time. He was unfrozen. He sent a psychic message and then died of old age.
Chris, go to the head of the class.
Yay!
Son of a bitch. What was it? Was there another example that you gave us? Or was it just that one? I think it was just that one. Damn it! Chris, you're up there on your own.
What was the most unusual and only example we gave?
So by definition, with both the most unusual and non-unusual at the same time. Relatively speaking.
Brilliant.
Right, I thought that was a very good WhatsApp chat back or whatever we're calling these ones.
It doesn't have a name yet. I don't think it deserves a name yet. Slap jam. I've got Dan. I know you're looking for a segue, so I've got this.
Go on then.
Kral.
Here it comes. Yeah.
Who's your favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle?
Michelangelo.
And what do they all say?
Necromunda.
You are welcome, Dan.
Speaking of turtles.
Oh,
there we go.
The laughter's fake, but the tears are real. So over the past few episodes, we've had a look at the Imperium or aspects of the Imperium of Man in some level of summarized detail. But I thought it might be interesting to see what it looks like when all of those aspects come together, perhaps even literally. We're going to look at what life is like on an imperial world, and we've chosen...
Let me guess. It's bollocks.
And so concludes the shortest episode of Laying Down the Lore Warhammer.
Thanks for
40K.
listening. Bye.
Very much mirroring the life of the imperial citizens. This episode is both brutal and short.
Like my penis. No, wait. Like Ben's peanut. Say that again.
So we're going to have a look at
Brutal.
we're going to have a look at Necromunda, or as we will now call it, the Chode planet. I just love the idea of someone looking at your junk going, Jesus, that's brutal.
And short.
I tell you what, he's not got much, but when he uses it, he made me feel like a right imperial citizen. So steering back to the topic at hand, I thought we'd have a look at the imperial world of Necromunda. This being very much an archetypical hive world, so one of the types of planets out in the Imperium, but it does reflect all aspects of imperial structure and shows what day-to-day life is like for imperial citizens within the Imperium of Man. The story of Necromunda really begins about 15,000 years ago when it was referred to as Arrhenius Prime. That was when it was discovered during the age of technology. It went through various kind of phases of colonization and development, ending up as its own kind of little mini empire. It was the heart of a kind of concordat that covered a half a dozen to a dozen other systems. This was rediscovered during the Great Crusade by accident. An explorator fleet had some scouts out, and they were returning from a battle when they discovered, they kind of jumped into the system and were immediately attacked by the kind of owning mini empire.
Wow.
This was then taken as they were kind of affronted by this violence. So an invasion fleet headed up by the Imperial Fist Space Marine chapter went through big open negotiations. The concordat that held that area of space rejected them quite rudely, and their entire empire was dismantled within 2 months by 20,000 space marines and a good few million of regular Imperial soldiers.
Cool.
This then fell into the Imperium of Man. Shortly thereafter, a number of warp gates, which had already existed, kind of, how would you describe it? Pulsed, throbbed, I suppose is a good word to use.
Wibbled.
And what is described as beings of lightning and fire chrome began to destroy the planets of that region of space, rendering them completely desolate and very much desertifying, as in desertification, not turning them into pudding. Although with chaos, you never know. You could end up with a pudding planet.
Lamont, we've already spoke about Jello Planet 329. It's where a lot of the Space Marines kind of go for training, isn't it?
That's right. And where they created the Jello fella.
Yeah.
Armed with an appetite, a spork, and a can-do attitude. This invasion, in quotes, was beaten back by the Imperial Fist at the cost of a fair few thousand Space Marines. But the end result was that it was secured. Arrhenius Prime was once again safely within the Imperium of Man. However, it had been ravaged by the kind of warp electrical storms, and this verdant, beautiful planet was rendered into, how would you describe it? Have you seen Mad Max Fury Road?
Yeah.
That on a planetary scale was what the planet. So it went from this kind of paradise, this technological high civilization kind of heaven planet, to a desert.
Just a bit shit.
Just a bit shit.
because it went from Shangri-La to a desolate planet because of these beings of lightning and fire. They just came in and fucked shit up. Who are these beings of fire and lightning?
Chris, we're clearly going to get to that part.
Well, we can do that right now because
Kraton's ruined it.
The kind of the take on it is it was either demons of Tzeentch because of the warp lightning and fire, or it was a happy band of death robots called the Necrons. But it's that whole thing remains unclear. There's kind of conflicting evidence as to who the enemy was. But the end result was the same. Arrhenius Prime was renamed Necromunda because it was a dead planet. Munda being world, planet being... Munda being world, planet being planet. So it was world planet. It became the dead planet, Necromunda, and was handed over ultimately to the nobility of the Helmwar family. Helmwar. History carried on, and we'll skip a lot of the kind of broader strokes, and we'll just head to what it is now. Mad Max Fury Road is a really good analogy for what it is. If you can imagine, it's constantly overcast. So think of Mad Max Fury Road, but with Scottish weather. That's what Necromunda is.
Nice.
So sandy but rainy.
Yeah. Like
Muddy.
every Scottish beach.
Yeah. Right.
It's more pebbles. We don't really
slow
do
sand.
Hurts your feet.
Yeah.
It's not pleasant. You wouldn't go on holiday there, that's for sure.
Well, not twice. So the Necromunda is what's referred to as a hive world. So this is the great kind of conical erections that pierce the sky and are cities that hold... been caught up on this before, so I'm going to choose my words very carefully here.
Is it trillions?
Billions of people.
Right. Okay.
Is it trillions?
Is it? I'm just going to make sure. Is it billions or is it 500?
It is billions.
Okay,
One of these smaller hives, which is really kind of a vertical conical city. That's what people should think about. Each one of these, even a kind of average one, houses at least 5 billion people. And some of the larger ones, like Hive Primus, which is the primary hive, the name's right there, the Ronseal hive, we'll call it, that has well over 10 billion souls living in that one area. Mr. Chris.
All human mixture? Is it kind of a metropolis of different races and species of life?
Apart from the occasional handful of xenos and one or two small invasions, it's entirely human plus abhuman. So there are squats there. There are the what's now known as the Votan, the kind of space dwarves,
and ratlings.
That's ratlings. Yes, the word ratlings.
Yeah.
And I got caught up with Skaven there. There are Ogren there as well. So good showing off, Ben. I could see by the expression on your face. I was like, "Oh, I remember a word."
We've all played Dark Tide. It's very easy to cheat at this game.
Well, you guys have played Dark Tide. My machine won't run it. So
we've all. Let me rephrase. We've all seen the
trailers
for. Yes, right.
We've all heard Modire complain that no one else is playing the Ogren heavy Dark Tide.
Yeah, exactly.
So, kind of extrapolating from the populace of a single hive, the kind of accepted populace on Necromunda is 100 billion Imperial citizens at least. It could be as high as 120 billion. These are all concentrated in these hive cities, and there are numerous versions of these dotted around the planet. Mr. Chris?
You may very well be covering this, but I'll ask it anyway. It's gone from a dead, desolate planet to a hive world. Why did it suddenly get populated, and over how long are we talking?
Great question. It will have happened over at least 2,000 to 4,000 years in terms of that initial kick. Because of where Necromunda sits within the segmentum solar, so that's within the central kind of segmentum of the Imperium of Man, it is a kind of strategically well-placed planet. And so there are a number of trade routes, a number of kind of military supply routes that pass through Necromundan space. It was very quickly turned into a manufacturing center, not a forge world, but a pseudo-industrial world. So it went from a civilized planet to a death world, because nothing existed there, to then an industrial planet. There was still a lot of mineral resources there. And that really was the kind of nail in the coffin for the planetary ecosystem. Over 10 millennia, Necromunda has gone from being just a desert, effectively, to being an industrialized hellscape. The entire planet has been ground down. There are no kind of mountains of any note other than the hive cities themselves, which effectively are mountains, or man-made mountains. The planet has been kind of drained of its resources and mined of its resources, its original resources, I should say. And Necromunda uses this, or the imperial house that governs it, uses it to churn out small arms, as in weapons, not tiny prosthetic limbs.
T-Rex.
Little T-Rex arms. Yeah. So while there are innumerable manufactorum, the factories of the Warhammer world, these are almost exclusively run by the kind of nobility in these hives, not by the Adeptus Mechanicus. And there's some evidence that at least one of the clan houses kills members of the Adeptus Mechanicus on site, that being the Van Saar. And they're great, and the reason for that, for their great kind of secret and their fierce independence, is they have an almost fully functional STC remaining. But it
It's like the Holy Grail, isn't it?
The holy grail of technology within the Imperium. So they produce weapons that are very high tech compared to what the kind of the basic drudgery of the Imperial forces use. So las guns, auto guns, bolt guns, up to certain types of heavy weapons, those are the primary exports of Necromunda. Most of the resources they need are harvested from the wastes. The deserts are not deserts of sand. They're deserts of silica and other minerals that kind of reflect light in a very kind of prismatic way. There are also innumerable settlements out there that have been abandoned, up to and including other hives, and we'll just touch on some of them. But very much the whole planet is effectively Mad Max plus The Last of Us plus what else? Plus maybe...
So not Waterworld. Like,
Mudworld.
So
it's the shittest theme park in the world.
Yeah. 2 questions. Who had the STC?
The Van Saar. It's one of the clan houses.
Okay. Sorry, 3 questions then. Does the Imperium know that they have it?
No.
Or is it a secret?
It's a closely guarded secret by the Van Saar.
Okay, 4 questions. If they have this STC, which has I mean, if it's a almost fully complete one, then it houses a library of human knowledge, basically. Is that right? And it can can create like virtually anything like a new world would need. Why do they only make weapons with it? Why do they only make small arms with
it? Because they don't want to draw attention. If suddenly you've got a load of jet bikes flying around, and the Mechanicum went, or the Mechanicus went, hey, you guys have never shown any kind of advanced technologies before. That is not to say they don't have them. They do have them. They do have jet bikes. They keep them real quiet.
Right.
Stealth bikes, yeah.
Stealth bike.
But in public, they're just like push bikes. They just pedal. It's just a regular bicycle. The rocket on the back. I'm just couriering this too.
It's like reading a comic, but inside an encyclopedia, isn't it? Just like just hide it from them.
More correctly, it's like reading the schematics for a jet bike inside an encyclopedia.
Yeah, exactly. What you said that the small arms that they produce, are they quite high tech?
They are the kind of they're up to the exacting standards of the not only the Mechanicus but also the Departamento Munitorum, which is the imperial kind of organization that supplies weapons to the Imperial Guard as is.
So they're not showing their hand by
no, not at all.
Right. Okay.
But they do create more advanced technologies and use them in their enforcement of the areas of control. So the Vansar, for instance, do have hoverboards. So they do have this kind of technology they can hover around.
Back to the Future style.
Yeah. They've got
that's the power of love.
Sing it, Krell.
Yeah.
Power of love.
I look forward to your copyright take then. Yeah.
Back to the Future pub style by Christopher Krell. Right, okay, one final question. Can I shut up, Krell? Can I ask about the atmosphere?
Yes.
Do they have one?
Do they have one? Yeah.
What's the ambiance like? Is it toxic?
Yeah.
Is it like everyone quite friendly?
Yeah, it's quite inclusive.
Can I ask about the general vibe? Okay.
I meant the gaseous atmosphere.
Yeah. So in terms of just the planet itself, there are several dozen.
Brush over that. Don't acknowledge that, Dar. Just
there are stop talking about it, Ben. So there are several dozen hive cities, all of which have shields, an outer shielding layer against the incredibly toxic and poisonous atmosphere that Necromunda has. Hive Primus, for instance, which is the kind of capital hive city, is 5 kilometers high, and it's only kind of like the top third that pierces through this overcast cloud layer, which covers the entire planet. So above that, it's, sun-filled, happy-go-lucky kind of existence, although not really. And below that cloud layer is a constant kind of stream or a constant acidic rain mixed with howling sandstorms or dust storms or ash storms, depending on where you are on the planet, within a kind of atmosphere that you would maybe last, a few minutes if you were breathing it open. It's so... It's more kind of incredibly aggressive and carcinogenic than strictly poisonous, although there are areas of the planet where it would kill you within a matter of moments. So almost all human existence occurs within the hive cities.
And have there ever been instances in which that kind of shield, I'm assuming that there are air recycling systems and filtration and atmosphere generators in the cities. Have there ever been instances in which they've broke down for a city?
It happens every day.
Wow.
Where
Okay.
the sheer acidicness of the atmosphere and the rain erodes the shielding, usually on the kind of bulk 2/3, the bottom 2/3, and the either the storms or the rain gets in. It leads to corroded air pipes. It leads to corroded water and infrastructure, and even exposure to certain areas of a hive for less than an hour can mean the deaths of tens of thousands of Imperial citizens.
Jesus.
And there's nothing that can be done. They would just be, highly poisoned.
Collateral damage.
Yeah.
Well, they'd be turned into corpse starch burgers, wouldn't they?
Corpse starch burgers.
Yummy.
But yes, so that atmosphere exists completely around the planet. The planet itself is almost completely this kind of silicaized desert, this industrial kind of spoilage. There used to be significant bodies of water, but these have slowly been evaporated or polluted, and now it's like a sort of toxic, runny mud that is referred to as the sump sea. It used to be kind of oceans in size. Yes, in terms of the atmosphere, it is an all-encompassing shit show. Very overcast, incredibly toxic. You, in general, need rebreathers or gas masks or some sort of futuristic scuba gear to be outside of the hives at all. I mentioned ash storms. These are effectively, they're storms, they're sandstorms, but replace the sand with razor blade sharp bits of silica and other minerals. It can strip the flesh from a body in less than a minute. You don't go outside unless you're in a armored vehicle, or you can be sure that the
take a brolly.
Yeah, take a brolly, or you can be sure there is, in quotes, a temperate area you can exist in with just a gas mask, because otherwise you're goners.
I'm singing in the silica rain, just singing.
That's not to say that human life does not exist outside of the hives. It absolutely does. Anyone who isn't within the hives or doesn't naturally call the hive cities their homes are referred to as ash nomads, and they're very much viewed as the kind of the Fremen warriors of Necromunda. They're incredibly tough, bordering on kind of mystical abilities to survive, although they are technological as much as anything else. They have trained the kind of natural insectoid fauna that lives within the wildlife, in quotes, of Necromunda, where they ride insects into battle, very much like the hippogriff riding guy we know from another podcast. And there are also like beast masters, where they control packs of these insectoid scurriers that can decimate human troops. Before launching any further, I should say everything I'm discussing in terms of individual aspects or troops or creatures is available as a miniature to play in the game of Necromunda. Necromunda has been so developed because it is a game. It is a kind of a separate 40k based game, currently in its second or third iteration, and is great, and the miniatures are fantastic. I highly recommend it. Mr. Chris.
So there are kind of native life forms that originate from Necromunda. They are insectoid, invertebrate style creatures there. There's no like mammalian type stuff. Certainly no. Had enough, mate.
It's gone.
For listeners, just mid-record, like Dar's got soundproofing all over the walls, and just sporadically it just decides it's done with being on the wall. It's just like, I'm leaving via the camera. Dunk.
Fuck it.
Yeah, bonk. Anyway, yes, Chris, great point. These are creatures that have become native. I think they were introduced at some point in the past and have evolved to that stage, because when Arrhenius Prime, was decimated by the kind of warp lightning of the mysterious invaders, nothing survived. It was as if they had dropped a virus bomb on the exterminatus style virus bomb on the planet. It was the same effect.
Wow.
Nothing living that wasn't hunkered down in bunkers. I really like the way that a bunker hunking, a hunker
bunker hunking.
Yeah.
Hunker, bunker, chunker, munker, bunker.
Necromunda, dude.
Necromunda.
But yes, there are beasts on the planet that can be tamed or suborned into either beasts of burden or steeds or what have you. And these can include mysteriously large beasts that can almost like the sandworms of Dune style size, but they're very few and far between. So in terms of the actual hives where people exist, I'll give you a few examples of them and touch on a few aspects of the world at the same time. If we look at something like a hive called Acropolis, that is a merchant kind of trade hub. It's still a hive, it's still enormous, and we'll talk about the kind of internal structure of these things shortly. But you have this kind of centralized conical conurbation of industrialized and residential areas, surrounded by shanty towns. So you have all these kind of tent, almost like the, what I'm going to mispronounce it here, in South America, favelas. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Favelas.
Yes, there we go. I knew I would get it wrong.
Favelas.
So you have these ad hoc, townships. Some completely surround the base of a hive, as it does with Acropolis, which makes it look like a blackhead or a spot or a zit, whatever the correct term is. A boil, yeah. So you have this hive surrounded by this kind of inflammation of flappy tents and townships and trade areas.
Are they within the shield?
No, they are outside of the shield, and I was just about to say there is seasonally almost all of them are blown completely away, so it's constantly being rebuilt, and the bodies are absorbed by an organization which we'll cover anon. Acropolis is incredibly affluent because of the trade that passes through. This is trade internal to Necromunda itself. Necromunda requires, because it has no arable land whatsoever, and no capacity to produce anything that could sustain life outside of life support systems in the broadest sense, like air conditioning units, water reclamation units, that kind of idea. Anything that can't be made on Necromunda has to be imported, and it passes through something called the Ring of Selene, which is an orbital trade dock, which almost completely surrounds the planet, very much like the rings of Saturn. And the biggest station on that is called the Eye of Selene. So it's a huge space station, trade hub, space dock, where there's a constant stream of produce and goods coming in. And then the traders take the small arms and weapons or whatever other kind of small good is made on the planet to, take it off to either deliver to the Munitorum or to independent rogue traders or.
Do they trade just raw minerals as well?
Sometimes, but in very rare cases, the Imperial House, as the House of Helmwar, who is the planetary governor, Gerontius Helmwar is the current Imperial governor of Necromunda.
Amazing.
And he is very kind of avaricious in terms of his desire to keep control of the planet because his family was entrusted with it and has generated a level of wealth that we ourselves, even the richest person here on this planet, could not imagine the level of wealth. Because with every transaction that happens on the Ring of Selene, planetary and interstellar trade, the house gets a cut.
Taxes, baby.
So
Amazing.
you
Taxes.
can imagine, there's tens of thousands of shipments are processed every day. And from each of them, they'll either get, payment in kind or an amount of imperial credits or influence or however else they decide to tax.
But is that money then, is it like a tax that's then needed for kind of upkeep and maintenance and whatnot?
Course.
Is there still very great overheads in terms of, the maintenance of Necromunda?
Ish is my answer.
Right.
The kind of hierarchy of Necromunda is feudal in nature, as it is on most imperial planets. So you've got the imperial house, and then under them you've got what's referred to as the great houses, and there are 6 great houses named within the game of Necromunda, but these appear as kind of Deus Ex Machina style organizations. These are the kind of highborn nobles of the Imperium of Necromunda. And they, some of the houses, you've got House Grime, House Ulanti, very exotic sounding names for brutal people in how they view their fellow imperial citizens. Most of the great houses are vying for position to be able to take over when House Helmwar eventually falls. And House Helmwar is giving kind of conflicting instructions to individual houses and is making the kind of areas of responsibility of each house kind of overlap so that the houses are focused on each other rather than the imperial house, and thus stability is maintained within the planet and its kind of organization. Mr. Chris.
House Helmwar, are they inevitably going to collapse and someone will have to take their place, or are they just hoping they will? Is that kind of is it a desire or is it an inevitability?
Well, I think it's a desire that everyone is working towards. So individual houses are trying to jockey for position to be able to take out aspects of the house. So there's constant assassinations for and against various houses. You have entire sections of the hive will be sabotaged because that area is under the influence of a certain great house, and thus weakens their position, weakens their areas of responsibility, and really impacts what they can do for the imperial house. Like, what is it they do? What is their function within Necromunda? Because appointed by the emperor, effectively, House Helmwar is is seen as the kind of, how would you describe it, the divinely touched right to rule. And so any forces of the larger Imperium that are on Necromunda, and there are a fair few, are loyal to their own structure, their own Imperium structure first and foremost, but they recognize the divine right of the Imperial House to rule Necromunda and will come down like a fucking ton of bricks or a ton of hives, who can say, on anyone that kind of challenges the rule or challenges the status quo. So it's money talks, really. So, the imperial tithe for Necromunda is quite high in terms of produced goods, weapons primarily, but also every now and then they have to tithe up entire regiments, such as like the Necromunda Spiders. It's the 8th Regiment. A spider is the kind of symbol of Necromunda, not only in terms of its tenacity, but also the kind of web of intrigue that the planet sits in within the kind of vying for power of the houses.
Cool.
Any disruption to trade means death. So
Gotcha.
Death. So the Imperium, the Imperial House, House Helmwar, effectively shoots first, then shoots again, then thinks about asking a question while shooting, and then asks the question.
Yeah.
That's really the process they go
And then
through.
shoots whoever answers.
Shoots whoever answers, yeah. But I mentioned there that there are other aspects of the Imperium on the planet. So Hive Temenos is really the Ecclesiarchy. That's where the kind of center of the imperial faith on Necromunda is within that hive. There's the associated clergy, but also there's a priory of Sisters of Battle on Necromunda. Cool. And that hive is in a constant state of inquisition. One can imagine everyone who is not professing their faith A, enough, or B, in the correct way, is simply burned. There are constant pyres of heretics.
Sounds reasonable.
In and around Hive Temenos. So, but that's what you have to understand, is that a standard imperial citizen is a factory worker or a miner. As in a coal miner, not a child. Although some of them are kids. I
have a question on that. Kids. How is this ridiculous population of, I think you said something like 100 gazillion trillion.
100 billion, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said. Is the population, grown in the same way that it is, naturally elsewhere? And if so, is there something wrong with these people? Like, why would they bring a child into that kind of environment?
Well, really, there's a few questions there, but we'll answer them as best I can. Yes, sex still happens. I'm guessing that's the core of your question, because that's your main interest.
Where do babies come from?
Only because it's such a mystery to me, Darren.
It's seen as a divine imperative. Humanity has a manifest destiny to take over the Imperium.
For the Imperium.
Basically, yes.
Amazing.
Humanity has to constantly grow and expand in the face of the existential horror of existence in the 41st millennium. Amazing. So it's seen as an absolute necessity. So you have things, if you recall, when we did the Sisters of Battle, we talked about the Order Famulus, which is the kind of Bene Gesserit style organization within the Ecclesiarchy that tracks bloodlines and so forth. So that happens for the nobility. Each great house needs a population to be able to produce goods via their factories. So they encourage that kind of shameful vertical and horizontal dancing to produce children and so forth. So, the circle of Hakuna Matata basically is the battle cry of the horny in
for the Emperor.
I think Hakuna Matata means don't worry. Not hump for the Imperium.
Well, listen to me. The question was, are they worried about bringing kids into this hellscape? Yeah, Hakuna Matata.
Okay, cool.
Fine.
Right, okay. That makes sense.
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
But there are other methods of procreation available to them, and we'll touch on perhaps the Delac and... because there is talk of cloning within that great house, which may or may not be true. If you actually find out the answer, a Delac will appear from the shadow and blow your head off. So we'll draw a veil and we'll move on. But yes, in terms of day-to-day existence for people within the Temenos Hive, yes, it's religious persecution day in, day out. When you're not working, you're praying, but you can't pray too much. If you recall, you can't spend too much time praying, because otherwise people will think you're avoiding work, in which case you die.
What an awesome life. What an
awesome life.
Yeah.
What did you say the name of that cloning family was called?
The Delac.
Delac. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll touch on another few of the hives, and then we'll deal with the kind of Hive Primus, the core hive. Necromunda has not been untouched by xenos influence in terms of invasion and raids. Necromunda has been, in the past, invaded by orcs, and we all know how difficult it is to get rid of orcs once they're upon your person in terms of planets. So there is a ruined hive called the Skull, which is one of the many instances of a hive being bombarded so much that the central spire collapses either straight down into the hive and detonates, killing billions, or topples off and
Killing
kind
billions.
of rolls nearby, killing billions. So the hive was invaded by orcs. Orc raiders crashed into the hive effectively and began orking up the place, to their heart's content. This then saw the return of the Imperial Fists, the Space Marine chapter. They landed back on the planet and in very short order destroyed the hive, almost guaranteeing the complete destruction of the orcs. But every now and then, there's a little sporing of orcish badness. Mr. Chris.
The Imperial Fist came in, destroyed the hive. Was that kind of like fight fire with fire? Let's purge this place.
Absolutely.
And so, like this is just the only solution to this, as far as we can see, is just destroy the hive. Otherwise, the orcs are just going to keep coming at it again and again.
Exactly right. Necromunda is such a vital world in terms of military supremacy in the sectors and segments around it that they have a zero tolerance policy on anything that might disrupt that influence. Mr. Ben.
Why do the Imperial Fists have such an interest in Necromunda? Why is it not another chapter or legion?
Because it was so tied to the history of the Imperial Fists in terms of it was their aspect of the Great Crusade that conquered that region of space. It was their chapter that sacrificed so many of their own battle brothers to close all those warp gates and try and protect such a vital strategic area, but also its relative closeness to Terra. So Necromunda is, galactically speaking, next door to the home of the Imperial Fists. Given the level of fighting that happened when the Orc raiders were being culled or repulsed, the Imperial Fists were so taken with the savagery of the gangs within Necromunda that they petitioned for and were granted the right to recruit Space Marine neophytes, the kind of young men that grow up to be Space Marines after going through Dr. Rick Niviera's process of improvement. So the Imperial Fists only recruit from two worlds: their home world, the Primarch's home world of Inuit, but also Necromunda. So that the destruction of the Skull, the hive, and the eradication of the orcs, that was when an Imperial Fist fortress monastery was set up on Necromunda. It's part of Necromundan geography, tied as it is to the Hive Primus, the kind of capital hive. Mr. Ben.
Question for Chris. Who is the Primarch of the Imperial Fists?
What are you doing?
Clack.
Is it Rabuti Guliman or Rogel Dawn or...
Oh, he's got it as a second guess.
It was Roger Dorn.
It was Roger Daltrey. Fantastic.
Got it. Yeah.
Well done, mate. Well done.
There is another kind of Xenos element infected the what's referred to as Hive Secundus, which was the second largest hive on the planet after Hive Primus. And this was the Gene Stealer cults. A Tyranid life form infected the populace of Hive Secundus in a very kind of penetrating DNA kind of way. Effectively, and we'll cover these separately when we talk about gene stealer cults, a gene stealer is an alien-style life form, as in from the movie Alien. But instead of this curved head, they've got like this bulbous, weird-looking human head that has what's referred to as an ovipositor, which is a tongue that lays an egg of genetic material in your body. And once it's in you, it
Yikes.
warps your reproductive cells. So when you give birth, if an infected person has a child, that becomes a hybrid of the gene stealer and a human. And that process continues until the great-great-grandchild of the original alien appears to be completely human, except for a couple of little knobbly bits on the forehead. But then their child, that fourth generation, their child, any kids they have, are what's referred to as pure strain gene stealers. That's the original monstrous construct that infected the populace in the first place.
Sorry, can you talk us through that cycle again? Because so the great grandchild.
No, I'm doing it in terms of generation. So the original alien infects a person.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
That person
man or woman.
has a child. Man or woman, doesn't matter. When that person has a child, the woman gives birth to what's referred to as the first generation. And that looks like a gene stealer merged a little bit with a human. And then when that one has a child, they produce a second generation, which still looks very alien-y, but a little bit more human. And then the third generation, with a bit of kind of wearing a special hat and covering up their perhaps mutated arms or claws, can pass for a human. And then their child, a fourth generation, will pass for a human. But that fourth generation, if they have a child, it's the original monster. It looks like the original monstrous alien.
What?
The thing to bear in mind, Chris,
Wow.
Chris, I see your hand. I see your hand, my friend. The thing to bear in mind is through all of this, they are intensely hypnotic creatures in terms of it's this monstrous fucking alien hybrid that's putting the Casanova moves on a regular human and does so through hypnotic suggestion to be able to...
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Basically,
Okay.
psychological rohypnol is what we're talking about here to create...
I'm learning so much.
Yeah.
I am learning so much. Sex is such a mystery.
Because you would assume that once someone's infected and they give birth to, for lack of a better term, an abomination, that's probably frowned upon, or it's not exactly what you want. So they would probably be ousted, or they would avoid having children, or something like that. But there's something.
I
genetic
doubt these children are being had in NHS hospitals. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
Well,
but is it more like back alley sort of pregnancies?
Yeah, literally. Back hive.
Right. Yeah.
Back hive. Apothecary shops. The danger with gene stealers is because they are so psychically active in terms of suppression and stealth, that over several generations you can get hundreds and thousands of these hybrids. And what ends up happening is they form a kind of cult where the leadership will start placing fourth generation hybrids within areas of kind of influence. So you see a lot of militaries are taken over from within as certain generals or commanders are replaced with these fourth generation hybrids are promoted within that organization. And the true danger is once they reach a kind of tipping point within the populace, the original alien, the original gene stealer, referred to as a patriarch, which is weird given that they're genderless, they activate a psychic beacon, or they generate a psychic beacon within their own body, and that attracts a Tyranid fleet, which will then just hoover the entire planet of anything biological.
Wow.
So
they're in it for the long game.
And are they positioning the fourth gen gene stealers in those positions to help with that invasion?
Yeah, to hamper any resistance. Mr. Chris.
Right.
You said they're quite psychically active. So do people like Sisters of Silence, can they sniff out gene stealers? Stealers?
Snealers.
Gene
sneakers.
Gene sneezers. Yeah. So, no, the Sisters of Silence are sent in to suppress psychers rather than hunt them out, even though they are used to hunt them out in an
Fair enough,
investigative...
but could they suppress the psychic abilities of gene stealers as easily as they could? Yeah, okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Can the Sisters of Silence sense psychic energy? Or is their effect so nullifying that it cancels it before they're like, oh god, that guy's a psyker? Do you know what I mean? If you put a Sister of Silence in a room with a 4th gen, is she going to be like, well, you're clearly an alien?
I can tell by your bulbous head.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing to do with
get out of here, you Klingon.
It's a great question. The default answer is no. They can't sense psychic powers. There may be a handful of exceptions to that, but in general, they're sent in to investigate the kind of secondary context of psychers, like, oh, this area here, this group of people is acting strangely. They might be under the influence of a psyker. So we'll send in someone to have a look at and track through the kind of command structure.
Interesting.
Anyway, back to Hive Secundus. It was revealed just in time that it was they had been penetrated by gene stealer cults, at which stage an entire system of trenches was dug around this hive, and it was bombarded by their own planetary battery. So missiles that would be used to take out void ships and battle cruisers were just launched at this singular hive, which was completely destroyed in a very kind of proper post-apocalyptic looking fashion. It's just the ribs of, and superstructure of this hive poking out of a blasted kind of silica desert wasteland. They did
Why did they dig the ditch?
They dug a trench system, like trench warfare, around the hive so that nothing could get out. Because even one gene stealer cultist who could get out could restart the cult from scratch.
Nice.
That battle still wages. That defensive network is still manned by the Planetary Defense Force of the Imperial House, supported as is every now and then by a strike force of Imperial Fists or from the Sisters of Battle. So, yes,
amazing.
Very much a lot of it's very busy. The planet is very busy in terms of things going on.
Sounds like it.
You've got 10 billion people on it. I mean,
well, yeah.
Something happened.
Yeah.
So the final hive I would just want to touch on is something called Hive Mortis, where within a few centuries, Hive Mortis was effectively depopulated. A hive of 6 to 7 billion people was turned into a tomb due to a plague, where people were sort of zombified, but all fell ill and died. They managed to contain it again through aggressive kind of quarantine, and when when all went quiet within Hive Mortis, they went in to see if there was any survivors or could they track the source of this kind of stuff. No survivors, no evidence of anything unnatural was released to the kind of the wider public, but Hive Mortis is now mined by the corpse guilds. They go in and explore the hive, open up literal veins of corpses in various settlements and towns, and then process those bodies into corpse starch, through which they feed to the rest of the planet.
Does that kind of nullify the effects of the plague? I'm guessing
the short answer is yes. The longer answer is every now and then you get this kind of thing flares up, but it's very, very rare. But when it happens, it's very much like 28 days later zombies will occur.
All right, that's pretty cool.
But
that's pretty cool.
Let's not skirt over the fact that there is an entire hive that they treat as a can of food, where bodies are mined effectively from the ruins of a tomb hive.
And when you're producing corpse starch, does it matter how old the corpse is? It could be a day old, it could be 20 years old.
Yep, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all.
Right.
What you have to remember as well is that all of these hives are sealed. They're behind these shield walls, so they're effectively hermetically sealed. So there's a lot of fresh corpse goodness still to be had in hive mortis. Which really, why would you name a hive that? That's just, you're asking for trouble.
Yeah,
they've all got kind of deathy names, haven't they? Like Necromunda and
that
Mortis,
is the planet.
and then other famous hives like
Necro this,
Deathy
that,
Deathy Death Tower,
Tower.
You know, Not Alive, Unbungalow,
Anti-Life Street,
Anti-Bungalow,
Morgsville.
We're just going to draw a veil.
Morgville.
Cadaver Village.
Overseers of Necromunda, is this the sound of your standard work shift? Are you concerned that while productivity may be up, existential suffering is down? The great Lord Helmawr has heard your pleas, and provides for you now a collection of 712 songs of devotional fear. Replace the trivial utterances of your workforce with whip-assisted silence as 85 hours of Ministerum-approved work hymns give praise to the God Emperor and the worthlessness of your workforce. Punctuate your work shifts with memorable hymns such as Chains of Faith, Helmwar's Iron Grip, the Creed of Eternal Obedience, and many more. House Helmwar's Songs of Devotional Fear. You mean nothing.
So what I thought we'd do now is just have a quick look at Hive Primus, which is the capital hive of Necromunda. And really, the entirety of the existence in Necromunda can be encapsulated in this one hive. Hive structures are, in general, geothermic. Most of their power comes from heat that's drawn up from the planet's core. So they have this huge hollow column going down into through the crust, and that's referred to as the sink. Each hive has one of those at its core. It's built around that very, very slowly. And over millennia, it's what gives it this kind of circular, conical appearance. The Hive Primus is a little under 6 kilometers high, or what would that be for our Imperial friends?
4 miles?
4. We'll call it 4 miles in height. So much, it's so tall that it has orbital docks at the top, or low orbital docks at the very top. So Voidcraft can actually come into the upper atmosphere, dock, and then leave again. And this is useful for units such as the Imperial Fists, whose Fortress Monastery is on the upper spire of the Primus Hive. So we can divide Hive Primus into thirds, but it's unequal thirds. There's 3 separate areas that are quite important. We have the upper spire at the very tip top. That is clear of all pollution. It's sunny, good, happy, fun times, constantly up there. That's where the members of House Helmwar live in unbelievable luxury. To them, a hive is collapsed and billions are dead. How irritating! That would be their attitude. How irritating! But where's my gin and tonic?
Inconvenient.
Yeah. How inconvenient.
How inconvenient. Have the boy lay out my formal shorts.
And by boy, I mean you. You lay out my formal shorts. And that's really it is the literal pinnacle of power, figuratively and literally, for Necromunda. That's where Gerontius Helmwar lives and controls. Where Geronimo lives and controls Necromunda. Below that, below the upper spire, we have the Spire, which is the piece of the hive that is above it's from the top of the kind of overcast cloud coverage into low orbit. And that's where the nobility live. That's where the kind of movers and shakers of Necromundan nobility exist. We've touched on some of them already. The House Grime, House Ulanti, House Ranlow, House Co-Iron. And each of these has an area of responsibility given to them or decreed that they have to look after by the Imperial House. And that can be manufacture, it can be law enforcement, it can be planetary defense, it can be chemicals, all of the kind of raw materials, all of the goods that are produced, and the security that all of these need. Their wealth is, again, I'd say perhaps slightly above the kind of richest person on planet Earth, but not too far above that. They're still cowed by the wealth and power of the Imperial House. What you'll find is that in the Spire, that's where all the kind of ambassadors of other systems and of the Imperium at large exist as well. So the Space Marine Fortress Monastery is built upon the Spire. Various members of the Ecclesiarchy will be there, as well as the Munitorum of Adaptus Terra. You'll get the occasional Inquisitor coming through, albeit quietly, and various members of the Imperial Guard will be there to make sure recruitment is up to scratch and training and so forth. So that's very much an outward-looking existence within the Necromundan world. It's where you're interacting with everyone from the Imperium, and as I say, from other systems, rogue traders, that kind of idea. You then have something called the Wall, and that's really a
wall.
A wall.
It's a disc of unobtainium that separates the Spire from the Hive City proper. And the Hive City is where all the factories are. It's where the production is carried out. It's where all the business end. It's where it's the vast majority of all humans within the Spire exist. And they exist within a gang culture, a gang warfare. But these gangs are part of what's referred to as the clan houses. And there are 6 of those clan houses that mirror or answer to one of the 6 of the great houses, who in turn answer to the Imperial House. So these 6 houses are, in the Necromunda game, you play a gang belonging to one of these 6 houses. And they're... the level of detail that they have written for them is staggering, and also outside the brief of this podcast. So the 6 houses each reflect some aspect of Necromundan culture, and I thought it might just be quite interesting just to touch on them. So House Cawdor are the kind of frothing faithful of Necromunda. These are the ones that have bought into the humano supremacy, imperial faith, hook, line, and sinker. They are constantly on the lookout for heretics. Their weapons, everyone carries weapons, but their weapons are usually like a machine gun that is underslung with a flamethrower, because you never know when you might need to toast a psyker or a mutant or someone you don't like.
100%.
Never leave home without it.
So the kind of extreme end of the Cawdor gangs are what's referred to as the Redemptionists. And I think we touched on these when we covered the Ecclesiarchy. These are the Spanish Inquisition of the Ecclesiarchy, or the Inquisition of the Ecclesiarchy. These are the rabbles that are roused and, mob justice, and they will burn an entire township down to get one individual. They don't care about killing the faithful of the Emperor, because the Emperor knows his own, and they should kill whoever they want. I should point out at this stage, we've just dealt with House Condor, that all of these houses engage in constant gang warfare and also are responsible for managing almost all of the production within the hive. So when there is gang warfare, these turf wars are about taking over factories, taking over areas where there might be, lost technology, taking over new areas that are uncovered as it comes out, so they can increase their own influence and increase the capacity to produce goods and thus be seen in a good light by the Imperial House and the Great Houses.
Sorry, did you say that there are 6 great houses and then 6 gang houses? And
yes, 6 clan houses. Yeah.
Each one is affiliated with one of the 6.
Each one has business dealings with the other. Yes,
Right.
The gangs are they do the dirty work of the noble houses. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Got it.
So, so an order might come down from the Imperial House that they want to see an increase in production of, commodity X. There are 2 great houses that will produce some aspect of commodity X. So one will get its clan house to try and take out the resources of the other clan house, and thus they're able to produce commodity X, and the other is unable or to meet their quota, and thus they will lose influence. The other will gain no influence. That is day-to-day existence in the politics of the great houses. So we'll batter through these. House Delac is seen as a very kind of stealthy house. They all dress like bald Neo from The Matrix, if Neo was bald. It's all trench coats and possibly cloning. Best not to delve too deep into that. Their primary resource is information. These are the kind of info brokers of the planet, in addition to being gangs that manage factories and so forth. House Escher, Clan House Escher, these are the Amazon warriors of Necromunda. They are almost all exclusively female, being produced in a very esoteric fashion. Every now and then there is a male who's born, but they are emaciated and imbecilic. That is a direct quote from the Necromunda rulebook. Imbecilic males in the house of Snoo Snoo. I look forward to your letters. But they are chemists of unbelievable skill. They produce all the narcotics and medicinal systems for Necromunda, either for their own consumption, for their sale, or for export off-world.
Are they balmy because of all the chemicals and fumes that they deal with?
No, but they're able to bring their own. They're able to bring people back from the dead if they get to them within enough time and reanimate their bodies. And there's some evidence that at least once they artificially created a pariah because a person came back with no soul. And when I say a person, I mean an Amazon. But they're also they're very accomplished beastmasters. They have a range of panther-like xenos life forms that they control and savage their opponents. Their natural rivals is what's referred to as House Goliath. And this is a new house in the grand scheme of things. It's a couple of 1,000 years old because they were artificially created. They were part of a eugenics experiment to create the perfect worker. And so they're all, these are all muscle-bound men that they would put Arnold Schwarzenegger to shame in terms of their strength and physique. They're not seen as being particularly intelligent. They are brutes in a kind of high-level way, or a high-level way of describing them. They do. There are female Goliaths, but in general, might makes right. And because of all the steroids, in quotes, that they take, it's usually the men that are in charge of these gangs. Interestingly, a lot of them have mohawks, and the leaders have mohawks that are chainsaws. So they have a steel mohawk that is a chainsaw that they use for headbutting people.
That seems annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you sleep with that? It's a lot of shredded pillows, isn't it? Don't even get into spooning.
We then touch on House Orlok, who are quite accomplished weapons manufacturers. Their aesthetic is a motorcycle gang. That's effectively the Sons of Anarchy writ large is what House Orlok is. They have a lot of kind of small vehicles when they go out into the ash wastes, but in general, they're quite good at producing bolt weapons. So you get a lot of kind of these elitish weapons within their gangs. But again, very kind of focused on production and protection of resources. The final one we touched on already, the Vansar. These are the ones with the sneaky STC hidden away. And they, unfortunately, the STC is malfunctioning. It's malfunctioning in a certain way that washes their body with radiation. So they have to wear a specialized suit, almost like a still suit from Dune, that cleans their blood. And of course, this suit was created with the help of the STC that is killing them. They have relatively high-tech weapons when compared to the rest of the populace, and have very much, I think one of them looks like they have a robot, access to robots that look like the squiddies from The Matrix, if you recall the little kind of squiddy things. But more in a kind of spidery sense, really. It's far fewer legs.
Spider squigs. Squigs? Squids.
Squids. Those are the kind of 6 clan houses, and these are the ones that control not only the Hive City within Hive Primus, but also in other hives. They have sent out gangs to take over either areas of other hives or ash wastes, townships. So they are by far the most common force that would be encountered in Necromunda. These are also the ones that are used as enforcers against the general populace of Necromunda. So if you work in a factory controlled by House Escher, you will be watched over and disciplined by the gangs of House Escher. The same for the House Cawdor or Vansar. Very much, they are the active they're the middle managing gangs of Necromunda.
Just getting in the way, an unnecessary layer of bureaucracy, you know.
Absolutely.
And violence.
Yeah, and violence, exactly.
And
exactly.
violence.
There's no need for them, but they're there to justify their paycheck, so they just, you know what I mean, they do their thing.
They do their thing and fight against other gangs when they have to. So the whole of kind of Necromundan security in terms of hive cities is a protection racket. That's really what it is.
Wow.
It's mafia fighting mafia against a backdrop of giant conical mafia towers. Mafia. That is not to say that there are not other forces within the Hive City, and indeed beneath the Hive City. Because of the nature of construction of these hives, the central kind of ring at the bottom have more often than not collapsed because of the pressure, the upper pressure of the rest of the hive forcing down. You get what's referred to as the underhive, where, if you can imagine, entire towns and cities just collapsing several hundred feet. And then that's the kind of landscape that you're faced in. It's illuminated by either bioluminescent algae and funguses or jury-rigged lighting systems. So it's a very kind of Twilight, Wild West feel, but like industrial, subterranean, post-apocalyptic Wild West. Now that's a mouthful.
Sounds beautiful, I'll be honest.
In there, you still have factories producing stuff. You still have settlements and townships. And that's really where the most violence, where the most combat happens, because that's also where you get the very occasional outbreak of the plague, which turns you get plague zombies. It's because the shielding is not really existent in terms of you're really looking at bedrock is what the kind of super base of the underhive, and thus kind of the water table and moisture, but all of that has been I was going to say corrupted. All of that has been polluted to a point where it will mutate and kill people who expose themselves to it for too long. Wait, that sounded weird. Who are exposed to it for too long. You've got flashers, mutant flashers with 6 cops just going, ah!
Flash is a very short career down there.
Yeah.
Look at this.
You then, even below that, you have something called the hive bottom, and that's really where just the detritus of thousands of years of existence ends up. And that includes something called the sump, which is this huge underwater kind of area where the natural kind of pollutants and liquids of all of these millions of factories producing all their goods ends up. It's the kind of poisonous cistern at the bottom of the hive. In all of these areas, there is still mining. There is still resource management going on. There are submersibles that go into the sump to extract valuable minerals from the kind of the waterlogged rocks at the bottom.
Yikes.
And within those areas, you get what's called scavies. These are gangs of mutants that will kind of raid settlements, very much the kind of Hills Have Eyes mutants kind of idea, if you've seen those movies.
Yeah.
And also they have some capacity to control plague zombies. So every now and then you will get a settlement that will just be overrun with zombies, and then the zombies will die off as the plague naturally ravages their system. But unfortunately, the disease continues to exist and or be spread. You also get what's called rat skins, and these are rat cultists within the Hive Primus. The original idea for them is based on redskins, the not at all politically incorrect view of Native Americans.
Wowzers. Jesus.
So if you could imagine, try to imagine and control your anger, control your righteous anger, that it's an entire culture where you strip out this kind of idea of harmony of nature with worship of a great rat being within the hive. And so these are explorers within the hive. They have an understanding of the structure of the hive and indeed, in quotes, the spirit of the hive that makes them incredibly valuable as scouts, but they also raid townships and fight off other gangs and people that perhaps get too close to an area of value to them, either practically or spiritually.
Yikes. Is it the horned rat?
No.
It is. You're not saying it, but you don't need to say it.
He's saying
the
no,
S-bomb.
But what he means is it's the horned rat, isn't it?
It's the S word, isn't it? It's the sk word.
Sk. Yeah. Sk.
Yeah.
So a lot of these mining operations require specialist equipment or specialist servitors. Servitors still exist, obviously, in the world of Necromunda, but they, in general, recruit from two broad areas. One is humans that are cybernetically enhanced, given bionic arms that have drills or hammers or shears or picks or whatever they need to be able to extract ores and other valuable things from rocks. But they also have ogrins who are augmented with power fists or picks or tools to be able to, again, either operate machinery or extract ores and other valuables from the body of the planet itself. We'll touch on three other kind of areas of influence before we'll wrap up. The first being Spire hunters, Spire gangs of the Hive Primus. And these are really the kind of dilettante, let's go killing everyone for fun gangs that are part of the kind of noble houses. If you can imagine 4 kind of broad types of warrior. One is a wingsuit with a laser gun. The second is a kind of a swordsman style, so a shield and a sword. The third is a kind of brutish, semi-power armored warrior who has power fists, but the power fists have bolt guns built into them. And the third is the third is effectively techno predator, as in technology, not in music. All of these are specific types of suit that a young noble would put on. One or more of them would go down through the wall that separates the Spire from the Hive City, and they would hunt citizens of the Imperium until they had killed enough that their suit upgrades. So their suit registers how many people they kill.
Mental.
And as they kill more, new areas of technology or augments are unlocked within their suit until they kill, a maximum amount, at which point they return victorious to their great house above the wall. Mr. Chris?
The suit that unlocks more and more powerful stuff as they kill more, is the suit being fed by the kills that they make, or is it like rewarding them? It's like, it's all here, you've just got to earn it and unlock it. Or does the suit power itself from all these deaths and killings?
It's a mix of both. Sustenance is gained through the blood of the people they kill. It's processed within the suit and turned into effectively high-grade kind of fancy corpse starch. But then it also records the number of the volume of death that they're causing. And this process really denudes any empathy for the working class from the noble, so the noble can manage these kind of large areas and large kind of populations without becoming emotionally attached to them. They're very much the nobility on Necromunda, and I won't draw equivalents with our own life, are very much the ticks on the kind of working masses of the planet. But it's all about maintaining order, and they do so through fear. That's the primary method of enforcement within the nobility, within Necromunda. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, not cool. I mean, not. It's a bit shit, isn't it? But the suit sounds fucking mad. It sounds like a video game thing, doesn't it?
That's true.
It's just the kind of someone's gamified slaughter.
Like every game available. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In terms of enforcement of the Great House's will, they do have their own kind of planetary law enforcement called the Enforcers, called Palatine Enforcers, and these are slightly less well-trained than the Adeptus Arbites or Arbites, who are the space FBI. These are the local law enforcement. And they really do have a shoot first, no questions, thank you attitude to dealing with anything that disrupts trade or production. And that's primarily what they're used for. They're used to enforce the will of the imperial house. And this is done really as a kind of motivational terror to get the populace to be able to understand the rules, and those that survive that process to maintain a level of output that's required by the Imperial House to meet that quota. There is, at the front of each of the books regarding Necromunda, the rule books, and there's 9 or 10 at this stage, they do have the kind of, this is the voice of Necromunda kind of spiel. So I just thought I'd read just a couple of bits because they're quite amusing. So for the first
one... Can we drench your voice in reverb while you do it? And, like,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally. This is the voice of the Necromunda something or other.
Subjects of Lord Helmawr, heed now the voice of Necromunda. Productivity in Sector Delta 7 is down by 0.07% since the last cycle. The displeasure of the Imperial House has been exacted upon all those within its environs. Praise be to the benevolence of the Imperial House. Blessed news for the inhabitants of Sector Delta 9, adjacent to Sector Delta 7. New domes have been cleared for the use of Delta 9's workers and citizens. As a reward for his beneficent gift, Lord Helmwar has set Delta 9 quotas at plus 90% for the first cycle commencing. Do not disappoint the Imperial House.
Wow. What happened to Delta 8?
That's somewhere else. But in that example of text, Delta 7, the factories and workers of Delta 7, only just failed to meet their quota and were all either killed or pushed out. And then that room was filled by the expanding kind of workforce of Delta 9, who then had their tides drastically increased to cover the kind of general shortfall.
Jesus.
That is a daily occurrence.
If you do, you're damned if you don't.
Absolutely. And so you either meet your quotas or you're killed. And either you're killed there or you're kicked out of the hive. And you end up in the underhive, or even at hive bottom, where you have to kind of struggle, a hand-to-mouth existence. Or you're kicked out of the hive, where you live in a shanty town, or you try and make it within any of the settlements within the Ash Wastes. It should be pointed out that travel between hives is incredibly dangerous, and they use what's referred to as land trains. You know, like the big, like in Australia, you've got these huge articulated lorries that,
road trains, they call them,
Yeah, that writ large, if you think these things are, 4 times as long and twice as wide, and are heavily armed and armored, and have machine gun nests on top of every container, and they have outriders on bikes or in kind of dune buggy style vehicles as they go between hives.
And undoubtedly there's some sort of like social ecosystem within the trains as well, isn't there? There's
absolutely.
There's an under-train
catering carts.
Yeah, exactly.
The bunks. Yeah. How much for a packet of crisps? You're not going to do it anywhere else, are you, mate? Fuck's sake.
But these land trains are constantly under attack by rival gangs. So each land train will be managed by a gang. Another gang from a rival house will try and disrupt it by, basically stealing it or stopping it from getting to where it needs to be. All of this is done against the kind of Mad Maxy backdrop of the Ash Wastes. And indeed, a lot of the house gangs, the clan houses, I apologize, so Escher, Cod, or Vansar, this kind of thing, have light vehicles that they use to go around and defend their kind of assets and territory within the Ash Wastes, and also to combat the Ash Nomad gangs who, ride into battle on their insecty steeds.
Nice. Are there minis for those guys?
There's minis for everything I'm describing. Absolutely,
wow.
Yeah.
That's fucking cool. Has anyone ever made like a diorama of like Necro Hive City? Or is it? I guess it's probably too ridiculous.
I mean, even scaled down, it's going to be like a mile high, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've done 10 billion minis to represent Primus Hivus Maximus. Okay.
Games Workshop did release a kind of hexagonal-based map of kind of 3D printed pieces, or game pieces that you could slot together to represent a campaign map for a gaming club's battle. And the Hive City piece was a fully covered tile that just had this kind of conical
That's cool.
city on it. But it looked awesome. It really did look awesome.
That's amazing.
The final thing I wanted to just touch on is that there are forces outside of the house structure that still answer to the Imperial House, but they look after largely the infrastructure of Necromunda. So these are the merchant guilds or the Mercator guilds. There are a handful of these that look after the basic survivalist needs of the populace. So you have the Water Guild, the Air Guild, and unfortunately the Corpse Guild. So the Water Guild deals in the recycling of water and also the transportation of pure water to the planet via the Ring of Selene. So they import clean, pure drinking water for the Imperial House and the Great Houses. They're also responsible for providing water to any kind of manufacturing facility. So you will have these guildsmen walking around the hives, and indeed there are miniatures for them. One of them is an Ogren who's got loads of water bottles kind of plugged into him. The Air Guild then is responsible for recycling the hermetically sealed air systems within each hive, and also to some extent for ensuring that the shield wall still exists and that the noble houses have pure air to, clean air with which to breathe. The Corpse Guild then, well, it's kind of self-explanatory really. These are guilds. These are kind of gangs of guildsmen that go around and collect the dead and bring them to bring out the dead to the kind of corpse grinder cults that produce, or rather, that dress in quotes the meat of humanity into kind of the first pulpy red soup that then is processed into corpse starch through the way. There is a rumor or a custom that you never look a member of the Corpse Guild in the face because you will drop dead. So whenever a Corpse Guild kind of envoy travels to a township or travels through an area, invariably all the doors and windows are locked and the dead are just laid out in the street for collection, for processing.
I'm not dead yet.
I'm not dead yet. Bring out your dead.
Thursday,
I'm mostly dead.
Corpse collection day.
Yeah.
Like
Corpse Tuesday.
I almost missed that yesterday. I had to run out quite early and be like, oh shit, blue bins. Corpse collection day.
Corpse collection. You then get into the kind of true infrastructure, or the guilds that manage the true infrastructure of the hive. So you've got the Electro Guild, which deals with electrical power. The Promethean Guild, which deals with fuel, so petrol. But the petrol used in the Imperium, referred to as Promethean, is a mix between regular petrol and napalm. So it's quite a volatile substance.
Kablamo.
You then have what's referred to as the Iron Guild, and they deal in the processing of all scrap within Necromunda. Those three guilds are insanely powerful and insanely wealthy, especially the Iron Guild, because every bit of metal that's sold in markets has to have their stamp. So if you find something the size of a fingernail, it has to be assessed by a member of the Iron Guild as to its quality and use for forging into one of the many goods that's shipped off the planet. The final couple of guilds there, really, you get the Guild of Coin. So these deal in taxes at ports of entry. That's really what they do. And they are money lenders as well. And then finally, the Slave Guild. And this really is quite a distasteful, if one can imagine, against such a backdrop, practice of slavery, where most of humanity is, if not outright slaves, are indentured servants to the great houses. They have no real sense of free will or really any desire to have that kind of sense of adventure. The slave guilds are the ones that produce the what's called the pit fighters or pit slaves. These are the cybernetically enhanced humans that have mining equipment attached to their body, either as arms or backpacks or whatever else. And these are the ones that work the mines, that shear metal into the correct sizes for production for other goods. And also, these are the ones that cybernetically enhance the Ogrins. And in some instances, they replace the Ogrin's skull with a kind of a very small robot head. And that's it.
A head that's too small for the body.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Slave Guild,
most.
The entire city sounds like a slave setup. I mean, anything below that wall thing is like you're a slave, dude. Do they get paid? Do the workers get paid in any way?
They get fed.
They get fed.
They're fed.
Right, yeah.
They get fed, and they're housed in quotes safety from the natural atmosphere of Necromunda.
So slaves.
Yeah.
Basically, slaves.
I mean, there are citizens who gain a sense of adventure and who then either join the gangs outright, or they're either born into the gangs, they join the gang, or they go out on their own as either what's referred to as hive scum. So these are like the gunslingers of the Wild West, and assassins for hire, or they become bounty hunters. So as you can imagine, where even obeying the law is technically against the law, there's a lot of people that need to be brought to justice, in quotes. And the bounty hunters take care of most of that. And some of them gang together and operate what's called hunter gangs or venator gangs, which is a gang of bounty hunters that will kind of try and take down larger, stronger enemies.
It's very Warhammer 40K, isn't it? It's like, right, so there's these fucking gangs, man. They are the gangs. But there's these gangs who are also gangier than those gangs. And then it's like, and then even like geographically, it's like you've got like there's the wall, and then there's just the rest of the thing. But there is a bit that's lower and it's worse. And you think that's bad. You just see what's under that.
And then outside of that, there's more gangs of the gangs that do the ganging.
It's
kind of on the edge of stability, isn't it? Like you do have the house. Who are the kind of
the Imperial House? Is that what you mean?
The Imperial House,
Helmwar, House Helmwar.
Helmwar. But there are other houses waiting for their opportunity to jump in there and usurp them. But then you've also got, as Ben said, like you've got a Venn diagram of all these different kinds of outfits, parties, gangs, posses that are forever changing. Like the social picture always seems to be changing. Like they've now taken over this district and over these industries and things like that. And somehow there is still there's enough stability to have an infrastructure to support billions of people.
I wonder, is there
economically, food wise, socially, like Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Is there like a news outlet that like keeps the workers updated? Because on any given week they could be working for a totally different gang. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I don't know. Well, the voice of Necromunda, the bit I read, that was that is the kind of planetary news, and it's updated every day. Just another couple of short ones here is that average unauthorized gang violence quotient is up 17%. Average authorized gang violence is up 12.7%.
Amazing.
And it says, and for both of those, they're tagged as, in contest, are we made strong? So, conflict breeds strength. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow. The obvious question, which gang would you be in? Which
gang? Okay.
Would you like me to recap the gangs?
I would like to recap the gangs, please.
The main 6 gangs. Cawdor are the frothing faithful.
Yeah.
The Dalak are the information spies. The Eshers are the Amazons. The Goliath are literally Goliaths. The Orlok are the late 90s biker gangs.
Bikers,
and the Vansar are the irradiated super soldiers.
Yeah.
Orlok.
You'll be delighted to hear, Chris, that with the one of the expansions for Necromunda, which is called the Ash Wastes, I think. I'll get pilloried if I don't get it right. One of the gangs is the Ash Nomads, so you get the insect steeds and the infantry warriors, but the other is the Orlocks, and they're on quad bikes, but it's quad bikes with a heavy weapon on the back. So it's two Orlock bikers.
Of course.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
They sound
So what about you, Ben?
But I do like the Fremen style dudes. Yeah, the Nomads, the Ash Nomads. They sound pretty good. They're not at the mercy of fucking the Imperium of Man, are they? They live out on
Not
their
really.
own.
No. They're just at the mercy of everything else.
Yeah, but they've managed to live in harmony with everything else. Harmony is in quotes there.
Harmony!
But it would take a lot to winkle them out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I think for me, it's going to be either the Vansar, the kind of techno dudes, irradiated techno dudes, or the Amazon ones. They just sound badass.
Amazon was a close second. Yeah. Even though there are no rainforests on Necromunda. But hey.
Yeah.
What do you know? What about you?
What do you know? What do you do? I kind of, thanks for asking. I kind of like the either the Spire hunters. These are the ones that come down and cull the kind of working class, or the Dalak, the information brokers, which is very much a role I fulfill on this fucking podcast.
I don't like it when you use the word "fucking" in front of this podcast.
I beg your pardon. So, I mean that's my data dump for Necromunda. What do you think of life in the Imperium? We've now covered, in summary, all of the aspects of the Imperium I wanted to kind of get out there before we look at other races and other factions. Imperium, thoughts?
Nah.
I hated them at the beginning. I hate them now. Yeah.
I mean, it's just fucked from top to bottom, isn't it?
What's the general vibe of the Imperium? Are the Imperium designed to be loathed and hated, or do people absolutely love the Imperium and the Emperor and everything it stands for? Are the proper Imperium nationalists in the world that are like, yeah, the Imperium, we should take over the galaxy?
Yeah,
I think due to the not only the laws of the Imperium and the kind of the kind of totalitarian rule, the fascist rule, plus the associated religious fervor that's encouraged to view the Emperor as a god. Everyone has this kind of idea of manifest destiny of humans first, but it's really driven by ignorance. Ignorance of anything different, ignorance of any change, fear of any change. So they absolutely do not want anything other than status quo, because that's what the Emperor was left with after the end of the Horus Heresy. So really, the humanity has become a civilization existing in the corpse of an empire that doesn't know it's dead yet.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
How would you effectively manage trillions upon trillions upon trillions of people who are constantly under threat, not just from aliens, not just from demons, but also from themselves, from the greed of the natural greed of humans? Would you just let them get on with it, or would you really compartmentalize everything, which is what the Imperium does?
Sure. Yeah.
Mental.
Yeah, I wouldn't choose to live there, but it's interesting to read about. And the kind of short brutality of life. I mean, even if you're promoted out of terrestrial life on Necromunda into one of the Imperial Guard regiments, or into one of the Space Marine, into the Imperial Fists, you still have a relatively short, brutal life as a warrior.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's still a relief from the day-to-day drudgery and danger of Necromunda. Going into war after war after war is almost safer than living a normal life on Necromunda.
Well, at least you've been given some sort of possibility of survival.
Yeah.
The risk is higher, but you're clad in fucking impenetrable armor.
Yeah.
Until you're penetrated.
We've got to wrap up. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, that's all from us. Thank you so much for listening. Details and imagery for the topics we've discussed in this podcast can be found on our website at layingdownthelore.com. We also have all our previous episodes on there, release schedules, merchandise, and you can sign up for the Laying Down the Lore newsletter, which includes exclusive info about upcoming releases, behind-the-scenes chat, and some extra lore not covered in the podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard in this episode and you want to support us, head over to patreon.com/laying down the lore 40k and sign up today for as little as £3, where you can see the picture of a hive, which Darren is trying to show us on the camera. This will also give you access to our Discord server, so you can come and tell us exactly what you think of Chris and his questionable gang choices. We'll be back again soon, displaying just how little Chris and I know. Until then, goodbye.
Necromunda dudes.
Toodaloo.